And so I originally competed against Felipe in 2016 for our first match. We were supposed to do a no time limit match, and then like 2 weeks out, he changed the rules and he wanted to do an hour long. So I said, okay, let's do an hour with EBI rules, and he agreed. And then like 3 days outside the match, he wanted to do 30 minutes with EBI rules, and I'm like, no, we already changed the rules. Like, we're gonna do this rule set. So I went to Studio 540. We went out to California, and I competed against Felipe in 2016. And about 45 minutes into the match, it was back and forth. He was winning the positional exchanges. He passed my guard a couple times, like maybe 4 or 5 times, but didn't really threaten any submissions. And I was threatening submissions into his legs. And, I swept him, I think, one time. He swept me back and then started passing. So I was threatening transitions into his legs with leg attacks. And he was trying to use the leg attacks to either take my back or get to guard passes. And then eventually I went to go expose his heel, and he hit a misdirectional, and he ended up taking my back. And once he got on my back, we kind of just punched the hand down, punched his hand across rather, and ended up strangling me. So that was my first and only submission loss as a black belt. And then we met again the next year, like 10 months later, at the ADCC absolute open weight finals, where we had a much more tightly contested match that time. I ended up taking him down. I almost passed his guard a few times. We were going back and forth. I spent most of the time entangled in his guard where he couldn't sweep me, but I couldn't pass. And then time was running short, and I wanted to finish him, so I set back into his legs, and he hit me with the same exact misdirectional that he hit the first time, and he took my back, and he ended up winning on points that time. And then ever since then, I've been trying to get a match with him, and he's just declined matches left and right. And he says he wants to compete on the internet, and then when I actually go out and get contracts and send him contracts, he won't sign the contract, or he finds a way out at some point. So he just had a match, his first match actually since 2019 ADCC, when he just got destroyed by Andre. He fought the Brazilian trials winner, and he just looked terrible. He actually won because the guy got 2 negatives for stalling, but the guy passed his guard and forced him to turtle and almost took his back and got 1 hook and a backheaded arm in. So Felipe didn't have a great showing. And then Felipe was taking so much heat for that match that he actually requested to do a no time limit match against the same guy, and he offered him to do a bet match. He's like, I'll bet however much money you want. So previously, when I was trying to get no time limit matches with Felipe, he would say, I'm not a submission fighter, quote, submission fighter, so I don't want to do no time limit. And I'm like, what does it even mean? Like, first of all, you're sponsored by a company whose slogan is the mission submission, number 1. Number 2, the entire goal of the sport is to get to a submission. So that doesn't even make sense, first of all. But I was like, okay, whatever. So I see this, and I'm like, hey, if you're doing no time limit bet matches, how about we do that instead? Forget this guy, and I'll give you 4-to-1 odds. However much you put up, I'll put up 4 times. You put up 10,000, I'll put up 40,000. You put up 100,000, I'll put up 400,000. And he made some elaborate posts to say no about it. And I was like, okay. I was like, 10-to-1. I was like, you put up 100, I'll put up 1,000,000. Put up 10, I put up 100. And he's like, okay, fine. And so he's like, okay, fine. So he publicly agreed to it, and then he realized, like, oh, maybe that wasn't a good idea. So he's like asking me, I'm like, give me anywhere to go. We can't do it outside the US. Or I asked to do it on Flow, on Who's Number One. And he didn't want to do it on Flow. He wanted to do it in a gym somewhere. I'm like, why would you want to do it in a gym when no one's going to pay you? It's going to be you giving me $10,000 versus a promotion that was willing to give you money. And he's like, no, I want to do it in a gym, so there's no biased media or anything. We just put it on YouTube. I'm like, all right, fine. I'm like, give me any gym in the US. We can even do it at Homolo's gym in California. And I'm like, I can't travel outside the US because I'm not vaccinated. And he goes, no, we'll do it in a neutral country. I'm like, we're not having a war here. Like, this isn't a peace treaty. Like, you compete in the US all the time. What are you talking about? He goes, let's do it in Italy. I'm like, so I look it up. I'm like, can you get into Italy without a vaccine? Like, you just have to get a test. So I'm like, okay, Italy, I can do it. He's like, when do you want to do it? I'm like, next weekend. He's like, next weekend? I'm like, yeah, next weekend. He goes, I can't do it next weekend. I'm like, why not? He goes, I need time to prepare and to do promotion. I'm like, you don't need to do promotion because we're doing it in a gym. There's no governing body who's profiting off of this match, so there's no promotion needed. And number two, I'm coming off a debilitating stomach issue. I should be the one who has to get ready. You just competed last weekend. It shouldn't really be an issue. You should already be in competition shape. He's like, no, can't do it next weekend. I'm like, okay, when do you want to do it? He's like, I need 2 months. I'm like, okay, I'll give you 2 months. I'm like, how's July 2nd? He goes, July 4th in Italy, there's like some event. He goes, we can do that at the event. I'm like, you said you wanted to do that at a gym. He goes, yes, we'll do it in the gym. I'm like, okay. So he goes, I'm going to have the guy who's organizing the event contact you because he also owns a gym and he can get you set up in the gym. I'm like, okay, great. I'm like, so Italy, July 4th, shouldn't be a problem. He's like, perfect. So the guy messaged me the next day. He goes, hey, Felipe just messaged me about a match. Let me know what we got to do to get it done. And I'm like, there's nothing that has to be done to get it done. Like, he just wants to compete in a gym. We send the money to a third-party escrow account. We fight in the gym. Someone gets submitted. Money's transferred to the winner. That's it. He goes, oh, Felipe messaged me and was asking me about competing against you on my event, and he wants to give us both $20,000 to compete, and he wants to do a 30 minutes points match. And I'm like, I just talked to him for 6 hours yesterday on Instagram, and none of this is what we talked about. I'm like, we're having a no time limit match. I'm not wasting my time trying to negotiate with you again. So I asked Felipe, I'm like, why is this guy talking about a 30 minutes points match? So then Felipe just ghosts me, doesn't answer. I'm like, okay, this is what happens every single time. So then Flo goes to him, and I'm assuming Flo offered him more money than he's ever gotten to do anything because he's fighting me. And so he accepts the match. He accepts the deal with Flo, no time limit, submission only. I'm like, wow, what an idiot that guy is. So he finally accepts the match, and now I have contracts being drawn up. We have contracts being drawn up for the actual bet match. So we have the Flo is going to be giving us purses, obviously, and then me and Felipe have a separate contract that we're trying to negotiate and work out now for an actual bet. I'm trying to get it so that the loser has to hand the winner a giant mock check. Like, he has to hand me a $10,000 check written out to King Ryan. But I don't know if he's going to go for that, so we'll see. But
that's for this one coming up.
That's for this one coming up, yeah. So there's actually two bet matches. There's one, I gave him 10-1 odds for the August event at who's number one, and I gave him 10-1 odds for ADCC should we meet. So if he makes it to the finals, which I doubt he will because he's terrible, if he makes it to the finals and we fight in the finals, there's a second bet match. So there's a possibility of me having to give him $200,000 or him having to give me $20,000.
What, for a guy that has 2 victories over you, what do you think explains this hesitancy or reluctance to compete again?
I think it's because everyone can clearly see that I'm a very different grappler than I was in 2016 and 2017, whereas Felipe is the same grappler, if not worse. I mean, if you look at his 2017 and early 2018 no-gi performances, he was on top of the world, crushing everyone. And if you look at his 2019 to current no-gi performances, he's actually objectively worse. He won 2 matches. He barely beat Jackson Souza and Baby Monster Valdur at Kasai. Then he got heel hooked by Tex, and then he didn't compete for like the whole year, no-gi. Competed against Andre, got smoked by Andre. Didn't compete for like, I think 30 months, no-gi. And then competed against the trials winner and like basically lost the match against the trials winner. So he's objectively just worse now from 2019 forward than he has been previously for like 2015, where he medaled at ADCC, 2016 and 2017, where he won the Absolute, in 2018, where he won ACB. So I think that deep down, he knows I'm very different in terms of the grappler that I am, and he knows that he's not. So I think that, and he knows if I beat him, like people are gonna forget about the first 2. I mean, they're always gonna bring it up, but the first 2 wins that he has will kind of be washed away after what I'm gonna do to him in October or in August, and he's like he kind of riding on those two wins. When people mention Felipe Pena's name, they never mention that he's a multiple-time world champion, a world absolute champion, ADCC absolute champion. Whenever someone mentions Felipe Pena, it's always Felipe Pena and then my name in the same sentence. His like biggest accomplishment ever is beating me when I was like 21 years old. So it's gonna be a rough night. It's gonna be. I know Felipe is probably getting paid a lot, but it's gonna be the most expensive match of his life because it's just gonna completely destroy his entire career and brand. He's gonna have to retire after this, essentially.
Is there anyone in particular you would like to see in the finals?
I think the main guy I want is Felipe because Felipe is going to be on the opposite side because he's either 2 or 3 seed and I'm number 1. So 1 and 4 will be same side, 2 and 3 will be same side. So I want Felipe in the finals because if I beat him in August and then I beat him at ADCC, then we're 2 and 2. That means we need to have a tiebreaker match where I can just beat him up again and I'll be 3 and 2. So by far, the person who I want to win the opposite side of the bracket is Felipe.